Welcome everyone to the 32-team franchise. This is Doomhammer. Today I'm going to be sharing a video about the top 5 best and worst coaching changes over the past 7 years in this franchise. So we'll go ahead and begin with the 5th worst coaching change, and that is Ron Meeks replacing Jim Haslett in 2006. So Jim Haslett had some decent success as the Saints head coach. His first year was 5-11, which was not great. Second year, he went 10-6, then 9-7, both years making the playoffs, but both years failing to win a playoff game. Both those years, we had Aaron Brooks for the first year, Aaron Brooks the second year, but he was injured, so there's John Booty kind of came in and went 4-1. Then they had J.P. Losman in 04 and 06, or 04 and 05, excuse me. And so Losman went 9-7, 8-9. But when they went 8-9 and missed the playoffs, they said, enough's enough. We're going to replace Jim Haslett. And they brought in Ron Meeks, who was the defensive coordinator for the Super Bowl winners, Indianapolis Colts. That following year, even without Ron Meeks, the Colts won back-to-back Super Bowls. Now, one reason why Ron Meeks got the chopping block, why he's one of the worst ones, was he went 7-10 his first year. And they made this big trade with Buffalo. So they ended up acquiring Drew Bledsoe. But then the first year of Bledsoe, they went 7-10. The following year, Bledsoe started out 3-6. It wasn't going very well for them. He brought in rookie Drew Stanton, who went 6-2. So they almost made the playoffs, went 9-8. So I thought there was some opportunity there. But then the following year, Drew Stanton went 3-10. Horrible. The total record was 5-12, as Mark Bolger kind of went 2-0 as a backup replacing Stanton. And after that year, Ron Meeks ended up deciding to leave, or excuse me, that the Saints decided to make Ron Meeks go away, and Ron Meeks has returned as the DC for the Colts. But that's for the 5th worst coaching change in the league. As for the 5th best coaching decision was Norv Turner replacing Mike Tice as the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. So Norv Turner has had head coach experience with Washington, with Oakland in the past. Never really turned out in real life. He was the San Diego Chargers coach with a lot of talent, but never able to truly win a Super Bowl with the Chargers and Phillip Rivers. But in my reality, he joined the Vikings after they went 5-11 with Dante Culpepper. So Tice went 10-6, 9-7. And then that one game they lost in the NFC Championship game to the Panthers, who ended up going to the Super Bowl and losing to the Texans. And then they went 5-11, which is when Mike Tice got the boot. Norv Turner as a head coach for the Vikings, and went 10-7, 10-7, 12-5, 13-4. Every year getting better. They are 2-3 in the playoffs. So they have 2 playoff wins. That one year they were knocked out in the first round. So there's still some work to be done to truly win a Super Bowl. But as for helping change that franchise around after letting Randy Moss go, because Randy Moss was no longer with the team, he ended up being traded. I think New England picked him up, and they got a decent haul for that receiver. They were able to cope with even getting rid of Dante Culpepper, who was a 4-time league MVP. He ended up leaving them, going to Buffalo. But again, league MVP with Culpepper when he was there. They transitioned very seamlessly with Brett Favre. So Norv Turner gets a top 5 best coaching change status. As for the 4th worst coaching decision was Romeo Crennel going to the Arizona Cardinals. Now, Arizona had Dave McGinnis for an extra season than he did in real life. In real life, McGinnis went 5-11, 4-12, and 0-2 and 0-3, respectively. In my reality, he went 4-12 the first year, 9-7 the second year, just missing the playoffs, then 7-9 again. Now, instead of hiring Dennis Green ended up joining the front office for another team, the Miami Dolphins. But they decided to hire Romeo Crennel, who was the defensive coordinator for the New England Patriots. Now, this was not the Patriots of real life where they won 3 Super Bowls in that time. They only won the 1, but they still had a solid defense. Romeo Crennel is still a top head coaching candidate, and so they went ahead and got Romeo Crennel. Crennel went 8-9 his first year. Not bad. But in doing so, he was working with the quarterback Michael Vick, who was 4-6. Trent Green was 4-3 that year. So Vick was injured for most of the year, which was kind of the excuse why they missed the playoffs. They did have Andre Johnson as well. And the following year, they went 5-12. Not so great with Romeo Crennel. And this was a year where he brought in, or Michael Vick was there the full season. He was 5-12, less than 3,000 yards passing, but he nearly had 1,000 yards rushing with 9 rushing TDs, which was very impressive. But they just weren't winning games, which Michael Vick has not been a game winner. He has not had good seasons, even when he was with the Falcons. So 5-12. Then the following year, Romeo Crennel went 7-10. This time he had Brett Favre at quarterback, who had 4,200 yards. I think he was the league leader in pass yards that year. Let me double check there. No, okay, he was behind Peyton Manning. Yeah, he was behind Peyton Manning. But they went 7-10. They had Calvin Johnson Jr., Tony Gonzalez, Andre Johnson, Ricky Williams, all this talent, but he failed to come away with the winning season that everybody expected him to come away with such a talented squad. So Romeo Crennel takes the 4th worst head coaching decision slot. Next on our best list, we have Sean Payton going to the San Diego Chargers. So Sean Payton had been the offensive coordinator for the New York Giants, and he did a very good job with them. And in doing so, he got the job right after Marty Schottenheimer went 5-11, and Schottenheimer had, with Breeze, went 8-8, 6-10, 5-11. Never made the playoffs even once. So it was time that Schottenheimer's attempt at getting that last real push as a head coach did not go well. As for Sean Payton, he has made the playoffs every year. He went 11-6, 9-8, 13-4, 11-6. They've been the number 1 team, I think, twice. I think that 11-6 season. No, excuse me. They were number 1 once. But even then, they were 3-4 in the playoffs. I mean, last year they were in the AFC Championship game, but lost to Pittsburgh in a very close match. But Sean Payton could be credited for the victories, but they also, in 2005, got rid of Drew Brees, and they drafted with a 3rd overall pick Aaron Rodgers. So getting Aaron Rodgers also helps transform a team to make them elite. And so we see Sean Payton claiming the 4th best ranked coaching decision because he's been a winner every single year, and he's very close to winning a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers. The 3rd worst coaching decision was the Cleveland Browns hiring former Steelers coach Bill Cowher. Now, Bill Cowher took over after Butch Davis went 8-8 his first year, then 5-11 the second year in 2003-04. Bill Cowher had 2 rough seasons with Pittsburgh, which is why they let him go, which is uncharacteristic of Pittsburgh, but I decided that, okay, I kind of liked Bill Cowher as a coach and hoped he would come to Cleveland in real life, so I tried to make that happen a little bit. But here is Bill Cowher's records in 3 seasons: 6-10, 5-12, 6-11. After 3 disturbingly awful seasons, he ended up getting the boot. And one of those things that I thought that they would have had a chance to actually play and be competitive. They brought in Kerry Collins after the Tim Couch, Trent Dilfer debacle of Butch Davis's management. But Kerry Collins was a decent option, but he just wasn't able to come away with the win. They had Charlie Fry in the second year start to get some attention, and then in 2006-07, that was the last season of Bill Cowher. He went with Charlie Fry, who was 6-10, and Bruce Gradkowski won the last game of the season to go. Maybe it was 5-10. Excuse me. So 6-11 was that final record. So Bill Cowher was trying to save the Cleveland Browns, but unfortunately was unable to win more than 6 games a year. Replacing him was Eric Mangini, who went 6-11, then 7-10 afterwards. The best record the Cleveland Browns has had was the first year with Butch Davis, 8-8. I had higher expectations for Bill Cowher, but unfortunately he was unable to meet them. Bill Cowher is getting a second chance now with the Indianapolis Colts taking over after the retired Tony Dungy. But as for Cleveland, this ranks as the 3rd worst coaching change in my franchise. The 3rd best coaching change in my league is Tom Coughlin in 2005, replacing Steve Mariucci with the San Francisco 49ers. So the 49ers in their first year went 10-6 and lost the NFC Championship game to the Philadelphia Eagles, who were 16-0. So they had a very good run that first year. So I kept, of course, Steve Mariucci afterwards. So there was no Dennis Erickson era in San Francisco. But Steve Mariucci went 7-9 and 8-8 the following seasons. Then in 2005, Tom Coughlin took the reins, went 7-10 his first year. They had Rex Grossman, but they brought in Drew Brees. And then I was thinking they would take off, but they didn't the first year, 7-10. Second year, they went 6-11, which was, again, not ideal. I'm going, okay, is Drew Brees just not that great? Is Tom Coughlin going to get fired again after being let go by the Jacksonville Jaguars? But then it happened. In 2007-08, they went 12-5. They made it to the Super Bowl and defeated the Denver Broncos for a Super Bowl victory, giving the San Francisco 49ers 6 total Super Bowl wins in franchise history. Then on top of that, the following season, 2008 and 2009, they had an 11-6 season, won 3 playoff games, made the Super Bowl, but unfortunately they lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers, but they did attend back-to-back Super Bowls, winning 1 and losing 1. So Tom Coughlin has accomplished more in my first 7 seasons, or in his only 4 seasons as the head coach, than the San Francisco 49ers did from 2002 to present day. So this makes Tom Coughlin one of the third best coaching change in my league. As for the second worst coaching decision in my franchise is Bill Parcells to the Dallas Cowboys after replacing Dave Campo. So this actually was the exact move that happened in real life. Dave Campo in real life went 5-11. For me, he went 4-12. Fired. Then they brought in Bill Parcells. The real Bill Parcells went 10-6 his first year. Mine went 5-10-1. Then in real life, in 2004 and 2005, he went 6-10. My Bill Parcells went 5-11. The next 2 years, Bill Parcells went 9-7, both years in real life. In my reality, he went 5-12, and then was fired at the end of the 05-06 season. So Parcells won 15 games in 3 years with the Dallas Cowboys. He was not the only Dallas Cowboys coach to have a difficult time. John Harbaugh, in his past 3 years, went 6-11. 12-5, which made the playoffs. It was a good push for Dallas with Peterson and Young. Then Harbaugh went 7-10. But Harbaugh's 3 seasons are better than any of Bill Parcells or Dave Campo's. But we see Bill Parcells was supposed to change the culture there in Dallas like he did in real life, where he kind of made Dallas more respectable. They didn't really win anything big with Bill Parcells in real life. I mean, they had 2 playoff losses and no playoff wins, but they had a lot better record than in real life, than in my franchise. So thus, Bill Parcells' inability to win more than 5 games in 3 seasons is the reason why Bill Parcells is the second worst coaching decision I made in this franchise. As for the second best head coaching decision I've made is actually quite a shocker, and it's Chris Palmer replacing Marty Morningway for the Detroit Lions. Big shocker here. So in my very first season, the Houston Texans did a little bit better than I expected, but not too great. But we had the Buffalo Bills win the Super Bowl, right? The Lions went 3-13. They drafted Charles Rogers, right? They had Joey Harrington the year before. Marty Morningway went 4-12 the following year. And after you go 3-13 and 4-12, you're out. And so there was no Steve Mariucci Lions run with me. But what happened was, since the Houston Texans, with Dom Capers and Chris Palmer as OC, won the Super Bowl in 2003-2004, that season, all of a sudden Chris Palmer, instead of being the bad coaches that they were with David Carr in real life, right? The real David Carr potentially had his career ruined because of Chris Palmer and Dom Capers. In my reality, he won a Super Bowl with them. He was right now the best Texans QB of all time, setting the bar high in their very first 2 seasons as an NFL franchise. So the Lions decided to bring in Chris Palmer as their head coach, getting another chance to be a head coach after a failed run in Cleveland in 2000. And each and every year, the Detroit Lions were getting better. So the first year he went 7-9, so a 3+ win than the year before with Marty Morningway. They went 7-10 the following year. Then they went 8-9. 10-7, making the playoffs, going 1-1. Then last year they were 11-6. So they went 7, 8, 10, 11 wins, including 1 playoff win and 2 playoff losses with the Detroit Lions. Now, of course, Palmer was working with Joey Harrington, hoping to get Harrington to be that next level quarterback like he did with David Carr from the same draft class. But after the 05-06 season, where Joey Harrington went 7-10, they decided that they drafted Brody Croyle, because Harrington ended up leaving to go to another team. He ended up being a backup more so. And then Matt Hasselbeck was there to be the starting quarterback. Now, the Detroit Lions season was 0-5 in the 2006-2007 season. I thought Palmer was going to get canned and fired because of that performance. But then came Brody Croyle. In the last 12 games, he went 8-4. That's why they went 8-9. So that was a big win streak near the end. Croyle was 18 touchdowns to 8 interceptions with 2,400 yards in only 12 games. After that season, Croyle had the start from the very beginning, and he ended up going 10-7, 3,500 yards, 25 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 1 playoff win, 1 playoff loss. And then last season going 11-6. Huge improvement. So, I mean, Brody Croyle is like a 59, 60 overall quarterback, but has been setting the league on fire. And I'm giving that credit to the head coach, Chris Palmer, making him the second best head coaching decision I made, and a very surprising one at that. Very proud of that surprise coach challenge. And this year, this past year when they went 11-6, was the year Rod Marinelli went 0-16. So the Lions have, in my franchise, has a 43% win percentage, whereas the real Lions from 2002 all the way to 2023, to the present day, has a 36% win. So, and they have never won a playoff game in real life, whereas mine, they've already won one because of Chris Palmer. As for the worst head coaching decision I have ever made in this franchise is Johnny Lynn replacing Dick Duron in Chicago. So Chicago has a very interesting past. So we have Dick Duron as head coach, and they went 5-11 his first year. And that was because they had Jim Miller at quarterback, no real playmakers, no real talent. But things shifted for Chicago that very first offseason because they ended up signing Rich Gannon from the Oakland Raiders. When they did that, they immediately traded their second-round pick to acquire Corey Dillon. They had Lee Evans at wide receiver coming up in this, I think, the following draft. They started really building a championship team. Now, Duron's first season with Gannon, they went 8-8, but they were going up against the Vikings with 4-time MVP Dante Culpepper and the Packers with Brett Favre. So they had some challenges they had to overcome. But then the following year, in 04-05, they went 10-6 and made the playoffs, but lost. The year after that, they went 11-6. I think they were one of the top teams. I think they had the first bye week, I believe. And then they lost. They went 11-6, and they lost that playoff game in 05-06. So they decided to fire Dick Duron because this was a win-now team. And Dick Duron was winning the season as everybody expected he would. But then he wasn't winning the games that mattered. And Rich Gannon's biological clock was ticking because he's in his early 40s, moving to his mid-40s, and was trying to win a Super Bowl. So the Bears made a change. They got rid of Duron, which was a shocker because he was actually a winning head coach for the past couple of seasons. So they go with the NFC champion defensive coordinator from the New York Giants, Johnny Lynn, to get his first head coaching job ever. His first year, he was supposed to make the playoffs again. He went 8-9 with Rich Gannon. At that time, I kind of indicated that as Gannon was probably furious with that. Maybe they didn't get along. The new head coach with a veteran quarterback who wants to win. He's not looking for rookie head coach mistakes. So he ended up wanting to be out of Chicago. And Gannon went to join the Carolina Panthers, where he did make the playoffs with them every year. But as for the Bears, that left them with somewhat of a quarterback controversy, right? Because they had to find someone else to replace him. And so they ended up drafting quarterback Brady Quinn, and they signed Kerry Collins. So they started with Collins going 5-7, and then Brady Quinn going 1-4. So Quinn's introduction to the league at the very end of the season was not very effective. He didn't win very much, but then he was going to get the next season as the starting quarterback, which was 08 and 09, where Brady Quinn went 3-9. He got hurt, and so then John Kitna came in, won a game as a starter, and Reggie McNeil played a few games, so their quarterback they drafted back in 2006. He went 1-3 as a starting quarterback for Chicago. So with that juggling and mismanagement of quarterbacks, losing games, going 5-12 last year, Johnny Lynn finally got fired. And now the Bears have to rebuild after the failure of what was Johnny Lynn. They were a 10-6, 11-6 playoff contender, Super Bowl contender, and Lynn literally made them go 8-9, 6-11, 5-12, regressed every single year. This year, Bruce Arians has taken the job from Johnny Lynn, as Bruce Arians has won 2 Super Bowls with the Pittsburgh Steelers as their OC. We will see now if he is able to transform the Bears back to playoff contention. And before we get to the final number one best coaching decision I made, here's a few honorable mentions. So we have Herm Edwards, who was out as the Jets coach, and he ended up joining the Miami Dolphins in 06-07, went 11-6, 10-7. Last year was a bit rough with 8-9, so some Steve McNair retirement, injury issues. And this year he is trying to keep this team moving forward with John Beck as the starter, and his alternative is Pat White, but he has been pretty good for Miami. Brad Childress with Atlanta has really done a great job transforming that team. I mean, they went with him 8-8, 9-8, 10-7, 8-9, 10-7. So Brad Childress almost kind of made that transition into being one of the top 5 because he's done a good job with Atlanta, keeping them either in the middle part of the league or into the playoffs as an NFC South representative, going up against the Carolina Panthers, who is the best defense in the league. Shout out to Pep Hamilton in his first season as the Tennessee Titans head coach. He ended up getting the job because of his great experience as an offensive coordinator working with Alex Smith with the Jets when they went 11-6 with Mike McCarthy. And so Pep Hamilton got a surprising rise to his career. And last year he went 10-7 with Kevin O'Connell, a 58 overall quarterback, 4th round, I think. And so because of that, I'm giving him that nod. But now we get to the best head coaching decision I have ever made. And that was Lovie Smith replacing Bill Cowher as the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach. Why is this the fact? Is that the year that Lovie Smith came in, right, was the year before Pittsburgh won the Super Bowl. But in Lovie Smith's first season as head coach, after drafting Ben Roethlisberger, the first quarterback off the board, I think it was the 7th or 8th overall pick, Lovie Smith went 11-5, 3 playoff wins, and won the Super Bowl over the St. Louis Rams with Warner, Falk, and all those strong receivers, Jason Witten, that loaded Rams team. The Pittsburgh Steelers won it. The following year, they went 8-9. It was a rough year, but they got through it. But then afterwards, they went 14-3. They were the number 1 team in the league in the AFC. They went 1-1 in the playoffs, unfortunately losing to I believe it was the Colts that year. And so the Colts ended up going to the Super Bowl and winning. So their loss was to the Super Bowl winning team. The following year, they were 9-8, went 1-1 in the playoffs again. But then last year, they went 10-7. They defeated some of the toughest teams in the league. They beat the New England Patriots. They beat the San Diego Chargers with Aaron Rodgers. They went to the Super Bowl against the San Francisco 49ers, who were the Super Bowl champions last year, and they won. So here we have, in real life, Bill Cowher won one of those Super Bowls. He won in 06, and then you had Mike Tomlin winning in 09. In this reality, Lovie Smith has won 2 Super Bowls on his own. And so right now, in real life Pittsburgh, they had 2 Super Bowl wins since from 02 to 2023 to present day. I have won 2 Super Bowls with Pittsburgh, and it's only 2009, right? So I have a lot of more opportunity here. Lovie Smith was an excellent coaching change decision, and he's been delivering for Pittsburgh ever since. As a Browns fan, that kind of pains me to say, but of course, it does make a lot of sense and helps with this reality where Pittsburgh's kind of that villain team that finds a way to win. Well, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, something a little bit different. I know a lot of my content is more straight highlights and replays of all the different games that I play. But if you're interested in more videos like this, please feel free to like and subscribe. I enjoy sharing more about the insights in this league because there's a lot of fun data, a lot of fun comparisons between real life and today, and seeing where some coaches or some players fared better in my league or worse in my league. So thanks for watching, and hope that you watch some more videos coming up.